Notre Dame 27, Penn State 24, and the Irish find themselves back in the national championship game in only year 3 under head coach Marcus Freeman. This was a great game, lots of swings back and forth, incredibly close game, and even when you look at the numbers, just look at the stats, it was very, very close. 27-24 Notre Dame, 383 total offensive yards for the Irish versus 343 total yards for Penn State. 23 first downs for Notre Dame, 20 first downs for Penn State, and time of possession, incredibly close. Notre Dame 29-56 and Penn State 30-04. If you look at this game, I think Penn State has better of the top tier high caliber players, at least that are making impacts, and I'm not talking about comparing rosters and star talent, but if you look at the matchup of Penn State's offense going up against Notre Dame's defense, you really like Tyler Warren there, and I think Tyler Warren is probably the best player on the field. I know Xavier Watts is really, really good, but I think Tyler Warren's the best player on the field in that matchup. Then the flip side of the ball, Penn State's defense versus Notre Dame's offense. Abdul Carter might be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, one of the best edge rushers in the country, 10-plus sack guy, has over 20 TFLs. He was the best player on the field on that side of the football. But Penn State still has big game James Franklin, and Drew Aller as their quarterback. Drew Aller, with what we saw today, was one of his worst performances, and I think he had 3 picks. 2 of them got called back due to penalties, which both those interceptions were in the red zone, which would have been just killers. And then, of course, he had the killer interception, the one that counted on the final offensive drive for Penn State, which then set up Notre Dame to kick the game-winning field goal. This is what Drew Aller is, and I know he already announced that he's coming back to Penn State for another year, but there's been a lot of draft buzz around this guy, a lot of NFL draft buzz. A lot of people think that if he declared this year, especially before this game, they think if he declared that he'd be a pretty high draft pick, and maybe now even people think he could be. And I think it's because he's a former 5-star recruit, state of Ohio, but former 5-star, still seems kind of raw, but it's like, dude, you're in your 3rd year now, 2nd year as a starter in this program at Penn State, and it looks like he's just hit a ceiling. And I think we have to believe him with what he's showing us. He is what he is as a college quarterback. He's pretty good, but he's limited, and you can't really trust him in these big-time games. And then James Franklin, I mean, this is the most James Franklin thing ever if you look at Penn State's total path in these playoffs. You get SMU and Boise State. You beat them, don't really have much trouble with that game, including Boise State. Penn State controlled that game. And then you play a close game to Notre Dame, a team that's equated with talent or maybe even a little bit better depending on how it matches up. But you play a close game, which you could have won, but you lose. That's the most James Franklin thing ever, is beating the teams you're supposed to beat, and then you play a talent-equated game, and you lose that game, and you lose it closely. There are things to like about Penn State, including this game, obviously targeting Tyler Warren. I mean, love the game plan, putting him in motion all game long. He lined up all over the place, wildcat, backfield, in the slot. He was a clear target of emphasis, as he should have been. Had a pretty, overall had an okay impact on the game. I mean, they definitely targeted him. He had 6 catches, but no touchdowns. So clear impact on the game, yes. But Notre Dame holding him to that stat line, under 70 yards, receiving, no touchdowns. You have to be really happy with that performance because you're not going to stop a guy like that. They're going to scheme him open. He's going to make plays. He's really good. But you have to limit his impact, and that's what they did. The running back duo for Penn State looks pretty good. I mean, we know that these guys are very good backs. Nick Singleton, 15 carries for 84 yards and 3 touchdowns. Big day from him. Katron Allen, 19 carries for 82 yards and looked like he was seeing the field well. Overall, 204 rushing yards for Penn State, out-rushing Notre Dame, who only had 116 total rushing yards. So Penn State actually did what they needed to on the ground. But overall, you have to give a ton of credit to Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame and that coaching staff for getting things right at halftime. Penn State jumped out to that early lead. Then Notre Dame got that field goal before half. So now you're like, okay, maybe we can win the middle 8, right? You win that middle section. And Notre Dame did that. Penn State kind of fought their way back. And here we are with Notre Dame going on to the national championship game. So clearly Marcus Freeman gets a ton of credit, got things right at halftime. And this is part of his evolution as a head coach. You look at these last 2 games. Against Georgia, that call on the punt late in the 4th quarter where they subbed the entire punt team off and brought their offense back on, that got the edge. He had the edge on Georgia and the edge on Kirby Smart, and it worked. They got the offsides penalty, got the first down, and that was essentially the end of the game. So that was an example of Marcus Freeman leveling himself up as a head coach, situational awareness and getting an edge, gaining an edge, that sort of thing. In this game, halftime, things just weren't going right, especially with the offense. Then they got things figured out. 24 second half points for Notre Dame, 17 points coming in the 4th quarter. A ton of credit to Marcus Freeman and his staff.